Awesome. It's a pleasure to be. Do you want me to start that again?
No,
Okay.
I'm gonna start, so I'll edit all this out. Don't worry.
Okay. ठीक है. नहीं, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you so
Wait,
much for having
hold
me.
it,
Okay.
hold it. I'm gonna welcome you, and then you say. No,
Okay. I thought you said that I was done. Cool. Yeah, we can do it.
yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's go with that. I'm still new to the interview space, and I'm always like over prepared as far as the guests are concerned. So, yeah, with that, let's go. Hi, and welcome to the Success with Savita podcast. Arjun, I'm super excited to have you here because you're my first food brand that I'm speaking to. But over and above that, I'm a fan of Bollywood, and I'm convinced Naagin has a Bollywood connection. So, with that, welcome and thank you for taking the time to be here with us today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on. This is super fun and looking forward to getting into some fun conversations over the next hour.
Yeah. So my first question, and I want to dive right in. I know that I'm still convinced that Nagin has a Bollywood name. But
Mhm.
before we go into the name, you've had a very unusual journey. And I would like to hear your story and how did you and your co-founders start Nagin? What was the story there?
Yeah. So we actually have, you'll hear a slightly different version, depending on which one of the three of us you talk to. But I'll tell you how it played out from my side.
Mhm.
So a little bit about my background. I graduated in 2008 and was working in finance, and then
Yeah.
basically spent the last, the entire 2010s for the most part running
Mm.
agencies, so like digital marketing, graphic
Yeah.
design, and content creation sort of companies, creatively inclined in general. And then this opportunity sort of came up, in 2018. So what actually happened is my partner at marketing firm that we're running was Kshitij,
Mhm.
and Mikhail and Kshitij actually knew each other from high school. As it turns out, my first agency actually did some of the branding work for Mikhail's pizza brand. So there was like all these fun little connections between the three of us. But Kshitij and Mikhail actually met and just caught up after a little while, and just started discussing about like work and prospects, and one thing led to another, from food content conversations to an active conversation, the like working on a product, and when so Kshitij kind of put that over to me. He's like, do you want to meet someone about this? I was like, yeah, of course, like this sounds great.
Mhm.
Three of us met, three of us absolutely hit it off, in the sense that we all had very clear ideas of what we could do. And
Okay.
it turns, having never had this conversation before, we all had very similar ideas of how you would kind of go about this. And I think that's one of the fun things is, like everyone wants the same thing, but it's like, do you have the same idea of like how you want to do it?
Mm.
And because there was so much like overlap and consistency between the way all of us thought, we just said, look, this is something we should really get into. And soon after that, we got into product development, some packaging work, some branding work, and then we were off to the races. And that was kind of how it began. So I'd love to say it was all mine, but like no, it actually came to me from my other two partners at the initial stage. And yeah, it's just been a superbly fun journey right from
Yeah.
day one, literally. Because I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting to start the conversation with, hey, do you want to get into hot sauce? that was
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Okay. And also interesting because you come from this agency, this marketing background,
Hmm.
nothing to do with food, and then you kind of, get into this. So it's possible for everyone to kind of just, you think you have to stay in your lane. And it's a good story for anyone who thinks that, oh, I can't switch now, or I've been doing this for a while, and how can I go into something which is completely new to me? So with that, I still think Nagin is because you guys are Sridevi fans, but I know the story, of course, about how that name came about. But for our audience, like we say, what's in a name? But it's such great recall. So how did you all come up with Nagin?
So, Mikhail, actually, I'll give credit to. He had this moment where he was just sort of like watching TV, IPL or something, and He's watching some of the cricketers celebrate with like a Naagin dance after taking like a wicket. And he was just like, that sounds like something that should exist in the world, is a Naagin sauce. And he just sort of like penned that down for like for future reference. And then as luck would have it, months later, he finally found two people who absolutely, heard it and said, that's not crazy. So that was definitely the start. I mean, I think it was a little, I mean, you had to think about it for a minute. It's not your average name.
Correct.
Um, so we had to be sure that it had a good sort of fit with everything that we are
Yeah.
trying to do. And I think it really captured the essence of what we're trying to do. You mentioned Devi, and that's definitely a part of it. I mean, Nagin, like the word or the idea, the theme is so intrinsically Indian. It's so associated with like fun. And I think that's
Yeah.
sort of what we were kind of trying to do as well. We're looking to do an Indian hot sauce. I mean, we're not selling medical equipment. So the idea is to have a little bit of fun, maybe with what you're doing as well. We're championing Indian chilies, local ingredients. So the
Yeah.
whole intrinsically Indian feel just felt right. And yeah, like you mentioned that it's memorable. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely one of the benefits of a name like this. But yeah, like it also just fit the product. I mean,
Yeah.
as they say, like saap dasta hai, and the sauce has a little bite because it's
Yeah.
a chili sauce. So on so many levels, it just felt like it worked, and we
Yeah.
just decided to take the leap of faith.
Yeah, but I like all the other names as well. So I think it just goes with the theme. There's Kanta, there's Booth, and everything
Yeah.
feels like you're really downing very spicy sauce. And I think,
Mhm.
you always, when you talk about branding and you're thinking about names, you're always teaching. That's what you learn in B school. At least it has to be something that has quick recall. And then everybody talks about Pepsi and Coke. But then here you have this brand, Nagin, which once you hear it, you can't forget, right? Like it just stays.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think a great choice of name, and I think it goes so much with your product line. But moving on, I want to ask you. Okay, you guys decide to get together, start this brand, put together this product. What were some challenges that you had around not just the choice of product, but around like product formulation and going back and forth
Sure.
around?
Um, Challenges. I mean, I hope you got a couple of hours for this.
Sure. Okay, the key
No,
ones, the
no,
main
I'm
ones.
kidding. I think the main one was what we wanted to do. We didn't feel really existed in the market.
Mm,
You have like your very generic level red and green chili sauces, which doesn't tell you about the
yeah.
flavor. It doesn't really tell you about like the chili. It's just as generic as they come. In fact, people care so little about the flavor that they've literally called it by, named it by the color. Um, and then you have a whole bunch of these international versions, which are super well known, like the Tabasco's, like a Mexican chili from an American company making like pepper water vinegar based sauces.
Yeah.
And that's doing well here, like, or
Yeah.
was doing well here. So we just didn't understand how that flavor profile could be as friendly to
Mm,
Indian food as a purely in a product imagined with the Indian consumer in mind. So if
okay.
sriracha you associate with like sort of like
Yeah.
an Asian flavor, but you feel like it might work well with like rice or noodles, we wanted to make something that works with bhajia or like dal rice, but also something you can enjoy with like home favorites like that cheese toast or
Mm,
something like that. So we wanted it to be something that just works for people, and that meant taking a slightly different approach towards coming up with the flavors. Now, the fun part in this is it wasn't like we had a target to aim at, in the sense that the category wasn't formed as such, where it's like, okay, this is exactly what people do, and like this is what the flavor expectation is from the customer. There
yeah.
was no expectation. So we had pretty much a free reign in terms of
Mm,
interpreting how we felt the sauces could be or should be. We decided to go with a Sankeshwari chili from Maharashtra,
mm,
understated. We're also, Bombay based, Maharashtra based. So we felt that that was a good connect. Our chef was super comfortable and, with the chili, and he's known about
yeah.
it for a while. It was nice, slow release of flavor. And then the Bhut Jolokia is obviously maybe the world's most popular chili,
Yeah.
and definitely has so much Indian cachet that we just felt for the real spice lovers out there, we had to do something on the really spicy end. So we knew the starting points were those, but the flavors sort of like developed along the way. We definitely made scores of sauces, like I mean, maybe even close to 100, maybe even past 100, but probably at least 70, 80 versions of the sauce before we finally decided, look, these are the two that we absolutely love, and this is what we should go ahead with. But yeah, like it's a
Was that
moving target.
easy? Narrowing down and
Um,
making a final decision? And who are the
it's
taste testers?
it should be not easy, but it weirdly it turned, or maybe not weirdly, it just turned out to be a very smooth process. Like I think one of the things, one of my first lessons moving from, like, say, service industry by and large to the food side is you can have similarly, like just an objective, everyone likes this,
Mm,
and sure, food is subjective, but there's some things that are just good and like everyone loves it. And we saw that in, the test that people did, like you'd see like the eyes widen, you'd see like the smile creep up, and you're like, okay, cool, like that's the reaction you wanted to get. And yeah, it was surprisingly easy to finalize on the version. But along the way, when you first got like five directions to go in, yeah, it was definitely a question on how you kind of play that out. Do you go with like a fruity style? Do you go with something else? Like, but consensus seemed to work out quite positively. And yeah, I think we all just loved the same things. That was another really good positive early.
yeah. But although I don't think that when you have the sauce, everyone's smiling, it's more like your eyes widen and your tears maybe
That's
on the
definitely the
spices.
booth. Yeah, that's definitely the booth can have that effect of people who are like not so spice
Yeah, not
inclined. But
this.
the original is really, like mild to medium, very family friendly. Kanta
Yeah,
warm is somewhere in between. So we try to come up with
it's
a little bit
bearable.
of something for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. You can tolerate it. I've tasted it, so I can say it is, I can tolerate it. But I'm South Indian, and of course, our taste level of, toleration for chili is, I
Yeah,
think, higher. I'm not sure.
most
But
definitely.
yeah, so now you had this product, moving on, and you narrowed down and you said, this is it. What came next? What was your go to market?
I think the idea was to get more early feedback from people, but people who weren't necessarily, say, part of the process. Sometimes you get attached to things when
Yeah,
you're doing it yourself, or like I don't know how much of my family's input I want to take because they're predisposed to wanting to be
support.
positive about
Like,
stuff,
yeah,
like, yeah, and maybe sometimes what you need is a brutal, sort of assessment from like a third party with like no vested interest or anything like that. And I think what we decided to do is we participated in a beer festival in 2019, earlier in the year. And there was like a little market with a whole bunch of new products. So we just got a stall there, and we tried to get a whole bunch of samples, and that was maybe the most, honestly, one of the most gratifying but also informative experiences for us to have early, because we tweaked the products like quite a bit between that time to the eventual launch, going
true.
with the feedback that we got from folks. So that was like super helpful. But that early feedback definitely helps. Like I suppose in tech you refer to it as like the MVP. Um,
Yeah.
but in this case we were a little further down the road. But it was really good to be able to get those insights. It just helps along the way. Yeah.
Okay. So you had that, and I hear this from quite a few brands that they go to and they talk to consumers, of course. What happened next was COVID, right? So
Yeah.
how did you kind of navigate through it and then go the online route? How was that experience?
The experience, I mean, it clearly that was something no one saw coming. It was like one of those challenges that you kind of learn from your peers a little bit, because you
Mm,
see left and right of you, like what are people doing? What are they able to mobilize at a time of like, extreme, confusion.
okay.
And then online is what sort of picked up first, for obvious reasons. And then we were kind of in that position where we're like, okay, cool, this is great, because I mean, in the sense that having a food brand in the pandemic is not maybe the worst thing in the world.
Mhm.
Yet at the same time, you don't really sit and guzzle down like, tons of hot sauce all by itself.
Yeah.
Like it's a pairing product, and you got to get people to try it. And the last thing you could do is go to someone and say, like, could you please put down your mask? I'd like to like you
Yeah.
to try something. So We had to get a little creative on the marketing side. We had
Mhm.
to get creative with content and sort of show what the experience was like, or like say the versatility of the product, like use
Mm.
cases and stuff like that. So I think you just automatically start finding different things that you can try and highlight when the one sensory sort of thing that you can't do, like you got to navigate around it. So luckily people were in a super experimental mood at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and people sort of just loved the product from there and gave us tons of feedback, which we eventually
Okay.
converted into more products. So just one, like really, an exercise that like you try and make the best of what, the chips that you're kind of given. So
True.
no pun intended.
And yeah, so I want to ask you here, did you plan to go online, or the plan was to go just into stores, into retail, into distribution? Or
Very
did you?
much so. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was my question. Did
Okay.
you want to do
No,
online?
so yeah, the plan absolutely from day one was to go online. We
Okay.
first launched on our website. Soon
Mm.
we got onto Amazon, and then from there, at the best pace that we could, we kind of started to talk to the neighborhood stores and stuff like that. This
Okay.
was just before COVID, so that
Yeah.
got a little more complicated over time. And then, but in the early days, it was just more about like trying to connect with your local shop and just kind of getting him to take a punt, take a chance. Like you hear no a lot, but that's okay. Like I
Yeah.
think that's just part of the startup experience.
Yeah, true. And I had to ask this question because we're talking about sauce. So, what's the secret sauce for the popularity and growth of Nagin, according to you?
Um, I think by and large, like a lot of what's happening in the grocery aisles,
Mm.
and this is sort of what we noticed when we were doing like the pre-launch research, for the companies. We just noticed that they were largely the same products, but just made
Mm.
by different companies with different packaging, different price points, but it's the same flavors, it's the same four or five things, it's the same items everywhere. And we
Okay.
just said, look, like for obvious reasons, like I mean, people are trying to sell you what they know they can sell. But we
Mm.
just thought that we'd take a slightly different approach and said, let's try and make products that we think people will love. Each product may not be for everyone. It's not going
Mhm.
to be that lowest common denominator, like a simple mayo or a mustard or a ketchup. Like, we're trying to do something, with different innovative flavors. So everything will not be for everyone, but we just trusted that, like, a good product with good ingredients, a good quality, good flavors is something that people will gravitate towards. So the long way to say, I think people were just open to experimentation, and I think food is just one of those things. Like, we've never met anyone. I've never met anyone who's decided that they've already got the best food figured out
Mm.
for the rest of their lives. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
always want to try the new restaurant, you want to try the new dish, you want to try the new product. So, food is just one of those beautiful things. So, we just felt that that would work in our favor. And it kind of did. People are super responsive to that. People love trying new things. And eventually, like the spicing client stumbled upon us first, but then it kind of got wider. But that's been a really gratifying experience. I think people just wanting new things is super helpful. I
Mm.
think the other one is be just trying to treat people the way you would want to have been treated. I know it's like a pretty basic thing to say, but like,
Yeah.
needless to say, I think we've all had one or two, let's say, uninspirational
Sure.
customer service experiences
Sure.
with various folks in the past. And like one of the things you find yourself thinking when you're dealing with those situations is, if I was on the other side, I would have done ABC. And like, this is one of those opportunities when you are on the other side. So the idea was
Mm.
just sort of like communicate with people the way you thought you would have liked it. And
Yeah.
even if it's like, something that you disagree on, there's nothing that you can't find a way through. So I think that's also definitely helped, is just people, maybe appreciating
I
a
think.
positive way to resolve things.
Yeah, and I'm very excited that you're sharing about customer service, the experience and delivering a qualitative experience, because not many people talk about that. Not many people talk about, I'm a food brand and you can buy it offline, but I'm still going to talk about the customer experience and deliver a higher quality experience. I come from a service background, so this is very close to my heart. And it's very interesting that you bring
Awesome.
this up in this context. And I have to ask you this question, though, is about Amitabh Bachchan tasting Naagin, right? That
Yeah.
was a story, and that came like out of the blue. Did that help in like putting the word a little bit more there, or how did that happen?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he is an icon like of the
Yeah.
country, and and I think what was really funny for us also to see was the comments of the post. Like, I mean, people are really invested in his diet in the country
Really?
and his
Okay.
well-being. And it's just funny. It's something we joked about because there's so many people like asking questions about like what he does and like, were you watching the match? And like, is this a good idea? Like, what are you eating?
Really?
And
Okay, I have
it
to
was
see this.
it's amazing like how much interest like he generates. But yeah, like we got the opportunity to have the product over to their house, and it was fantastic that they absolutely liked the product as well. That was amazing. And like you said, like it definitely, I think it definitely brought attention to the brand, to a whole bunch of people that we might never have come across for a long, long time. But that was nice. That was a lovely
See, I told you you have Bollywood connection. You have the
memory.
Bollywood connection. I thought it was Sridevi, but it ended up being Amitabh Bachchan. But moving on from there, how has been you're a startup, so I have to ask you this. How has been the
Mhm.
fundraising experience? And would you like to share like a few tips for other entrepreneurs who are in this space trying to raise funds? Anything that comes to mind that you'd like to share in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say like the part that's like not rocket science is people like if you're building something good, I think that definitely helps. Like if you've got a good product, you've got a good team, you've got good experience, or best yet for investors, like if you've got great sales, like these are all things that like people sort of like gravitate towards. And honestly, like fundraising is in many ways you're finding a partner in every way, in a sense as well. So it's something that both parties have to be comfortable with. You kind of like develop a relationship with these people, and they're going to be your biggest backers. So it's something that just happens. You've got to, but you got to work at it like anything else. And I would say if I had to give any piece of advice, and again, this is nothing new, but it's just one of those that like rings more true once you've gone through the process, is that everything takes longer than you imagine.
Okay.
So the sooner you start, the better. And whether it's creating a deck, reaching out to people, having discussions, eventually, maybe if you reach like due diligence or something like that, it can all be really time consuming. And when you're
Mm,
also sort of running the business, you sometimes don't, like necessarily plan for all the additional stuff that comes your way as part of the process. So in a nutshell, I'd just say start early and expect that it'll be more work than you imagined, and it'll take longer than you might imagine.
okay, great advice. I would agree with you. That's not one often heard, though. You said that people have heard this, but it's not often heard. Usually, the advice is expect to hear a lot of no's as well. So I think
Which is
great
also
advice.
true.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. And now coming back to Nagin, I'm sure you have a lot of stories about Nagin, but is there a fun one that you'd like to share with us about Nagin, the
Um,
audience, clients experiencing it?
um, there's no one maybe, but there's like a series, like and it's a wide assortment of just, like light moments that come your way, like, in your personal life, like we've all of our friends will sort of just like bust out a dance or something when they see you, like and
Okay.
it's just so funny every time because you're just like shaking your head and just like or laughing along with them.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like a funny thing that just happens casually. I think the fun one is also when um a really good story, I think, was like when we first sort of decided to do Nagin.
Mhm.
We were just like, so, so guys, are we doing this? And then I think I just responded with like the snake emoji, and promptly, got the same response back from everyone in the WhatsApp group. And that's been part of the group, our WhatsApp group name for like the longest time. And yeah, it's just one of those funny things. Every time you're searching
That
for
is
the
funny.
group, you got to look for the emoji. And like, yeah, it's just one of those, it's a weird, fun reminder that like, you're doing something that's like bringing you joy, and like, sort of like a reminder of the moment where it was, it just sort of started. But yeah, I don't know if that counts as a single story. It's
No,
just,
that's
it
fun. I
brings a
mean,
smile to my
because
face every time.
I'm sure because we use a snake emoji for in a very different context. So yeah,
Oh, really? I'd love
I
to
mean,
hear what that is.
like when somebody is like lies and stuff, then you're like, oh, that one's a snake, right? So then you use the snake
So
emoji.
harsh. I'm sure
Yeah,
snakes all over pop culture will be very disappointed. They've
I'm
always
sure.
been painted as the
Absolutely.
villains. Becharas, Kaa was the villain in
Like,
Jungle Book as
what's
well.
use? It's not me. It's how everybody uses it.
Yeah.
The snake emoji. But yeah, I mean, moving on from that, I'm sure you have so many. And I'm sure everything has something to do with the snake for sure with you guys. But so far, what has been like the best business lesson you've learned? Again, many, but something that comes like top of mind.
Um, I think you have to just get used to being uncomfortable.
Okay.
And it's like there's the second you settle into a routine, you could probably be doing something more. And then in order to do that something more, you have to do something different, or you have to add like a new layer. And each time you're trying to do something different, it involves all the setup work required to get it going. So I think you have to just embrace being slightly uncomfortable. But not in like a really negative way. It's not abject misery or anything. It's just
Yeah.
you have to but embrace the unpredictability of it, and like and just enjoy the fact that no 2 days are ever really the same. I mean, I think one thing that's like guaranteed when you're running your own business is, at least for the most part, is it's really hard. Like each year is really different, and it doesn't
Mm.
feel like you did 20 years, but like I repeated the first one 19 times. Like you never have that feeling, because the scale, the challenges, the situation, everything is so dynamic that it just keeps you on your toes. And, just sort of like always in a moment, like there's something happening. So I think the idea is you have to just get used to that. It isn't like a, start at this time, end at this time, and then just shut off sort of thing. I'm sure there's people who have managed to pull that off, and hats off to them. But for the most part, in the early days, that's very difficult, very difficult.
Yeah, and I don't know if how many people are managing to pull that off, especially if you're the owner of your business.
I mean, if you
I
look at
think
Instagram, it looks like a whole bunch of people are managing to pull it off. But yeah, I
uh,
mean, from
I thought
all
the
other
biggest
founders, yeah,
no, I thought the biggest
will
meme
agree.
is you exchange your 9 to 5 for a 24/7, or people just
I haven't
I
seen
see
this,
that
but
all the
I agree
time.
with that one. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's the nine
Yeah.
to fivers who have it good because they can switch off and say I'm done, right? But
Yeah.
business is different.
Yeah.
But
Grass is
yeah,
always greener.
true,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think in terms of a business lesson that you've learned, that's true. And it remains like that. And it's good to get happy with being, I mean, good to know that you're going to be uncomfortable versus saying, is this ever going to change?
Yeah.
Is it, this is not what I signed up for. So it's good to know that. But what is one thing you wish you knew? And I'm going to keep it in specific to Nagin.
Okay.
Before you came into Nagin, like you were a digital marketer,
Sure.
then you became an entrepreneur. I'm sure you obviously you ran your own thing earlier as well,
Yeah.
but specifically in concern with Nagin, what is one thing you wish you knew at the beginning before you started?
I think it's something, I'll cheat a little bit if you don't mind. But
Mm.
it's not something you don't know, but it's something that you don't until you kind of experience it.
Okay,
So sorry, just 1 second. I think my phone
sure,
is
sure.
dying. Let me just resolve this. Oops. This is
No,
going
no,
to
that's
be
fine.
interesting. 1 second.
Hey, you're back. You're on mute. Huh.
Yes, got
Okay.
it.
Your phone
Yes,
shut
sorry
down.
about that. Yeah, absolutely. Decided to give me no notice whatsoever.
Uh, Okay, so we'll keep going. It's okay. We are just almost
Sure.
towards the end. We have a few more questions. So let
Mhm.
me ask you this again. What's the one thing you wish you knew when you started?
Ooh. Um, So you said specifically about the business, right?
Or
Like the
in
Naagin
general.
business in general. Oh, in general, I would say I wish I knew the pandemic was coming. We would have surely made
Okay, fast. That doesn't
a million
count.
changes.
So,
That doesn't count. Okay, cool. I think I'll cheat a little bit on this one because it's not something like you
okay.
don't know, but it's just one of those where you kind of you figure this out over the course of just working on things is when you're doing sort of like a service business, sometimes like the agency business, for example, you could have a particular type of product or like a particular design or something at say 7 in the evening, and if someone doesn't like it, you could spend many hours over the into the wee hours of the morning, and when someone else wakes up at 7 in the morning, you could have something completely different, and it's this amazing thing that like sort of checked all the boxes. But there's not much you can do overnight, like in a product business. Like there's so many different threads to connect, like whether it's sort of like the actual production of it or the inventory planning or the logistics of it or whatever the case might be. Like there's so much actually going on that to make any major meaningful change, it takes time. And surely in food, because you kind of have to maintain certain like hygiene levels and things like
Yeah.
that. So you can't really just, I mean, it's not to undermine anyone else's, sort of the way it is. And in fact, I love it, but like it's not as simple as change 5 colors and now we've got 5 products. So each one comes with its own little challenges. But I think the idea generally being that it takes time to effect change. So you try and move as fast as you can every day, but you got to kind of be patient and see things develop in front of you. But yeah, that's what
Okay.
I'd say is yeah.
Sure. That's a good one. And my next, I know I've asked you what's the best business lesson, what did you wish you know, and all of that. What's overrated advice in business? Is there one?
Overrated advice.
Yeah, the most
Um,
overrated advice.
is this something like general or in applied?
Apply
I'd
for any
say
business.
when people take follow your passion too literally, I think is like because you should follow your passion in the sense that you should do what brings you joy and stuff like that. But eh, let's just say that there's certain unglamorous tasks that you may not be passionate about, but are absolutely essential to getting anything done. Like, I mean, maybe you're a football player and you love scoring goals, but that's your passion. But you can't do that if you're unable to run 8 kilometers a game, if you don't have chemistry with your teammates, if you're not putting in the hard work at the training pitch. Like these are unglamorous things that you may not be excited about, but it's essential to doing what it is that you actually love. Or like even like so I recently got I got a puppy,
Mm,
and like I love the like it's great, it's fantastic, and you love everything you love about having a dog, but that means you got to go for walks, it means you got to be responsible to like take them to the vet. Like there's so many things that you're not excited about,
yeah.
but it's all. So I think what I'm trying to say is like if you take it too literally and you only do the fun things, that's bad
Mm,
advice. But
yeah.
if you appreciate that the joy is in the eventual outcomes, but like you have to enjoy the process a little bit more. Like you have to convince yourself that the process and the struggle is as much part of the joy of the journey as anything else.
Yeah.
And if that's where you are, then absolutely follow every single passion. Like,
True.
but until then, I think it's probably good advice to put a little asterisk on that comment. And just,
Okay.
yeah, there's some other things involved as well.
Yeah, preparing for all the other not fun parts of your, chasing your passion is key. Reminds me with your puppy story of parenting as well. So that's
Yeah,
another.
of
I
course.
mean, you can. love being a parent, but there are crazy days and there are hard days. So yeah,
So I
absolutely.
hear, so
And
I hear in a lot of detail from friends. So
okay,
yeah, I mean, I
a puppy,
absolutely believe it.
you'll
That's
it's
a,
like
that's my version of figuring
that's
out what it's like. Yeah.
yeah. All right. And before we move on to you, I have just one question about Nagin. What's next for Nagin? You're in a really exciting phase at this time. It's still early days, I guess,
Mhm.
but what's the next couple of years looking like? Anything that you can share?
I wish I could make a really good prediction for 2 years ahead, but I think it like so much changes on a regular basis. But I think in a nutshell, we've got a whole bunch of exciting new products coming out that we're excited to bring to market later this year and again next year. We, as you can imagine, is part of the continuing mission of the company to always expand its footprint, like sort of online and offline. So try and get into more stores, kind of, you know, do more marketing purposes, sharing information with customers, things like that. And then there's some promising export conversations which we just hope sort of work out. And yeah, like, and for the rest of it, I think it would be cool if people just followed us and found out. Like, I mean, we're always happy to share all the goings ons of whatever's up.
Awesome. I'm sure all of that is definitely going to happen for all of you. With that, tell me, your experience as a marketer must have helped a lot. Did that help a lot with the growing and scaling of Nugget?
I think whatever experience you have helps. Like if you've ever done budgeting, that's great. If you've ever set up a large scale project, that's awesome. If you've ever had to own team, it could be as granular as that. That's also awesome. Recruitment experience is great. Like literally anything and everything you could have ever done really helps. So like the more diverse experiences you've had, it'll just help you at the early stage of like starting. But all that said, like you'll figure everything out. Like if once you got to do it, you'll find a way to make it happen. So there's nothing that you can't do if you put your mind to it fully.
Okay, and now for you, tell me about a day in your life. I know you said it's different, every day is different, but what
Mhm.
does an average day in the life of a Nagin co-founder? I'm saying Nagin again because I still can't get over the name, of course, but yeah, what does a day in your life look like?
Oh, this is gonna be really boring. So I think you kind of know where this is going. You wake up, you walk the dog, come back, there's coffee, some emails, go through the work day, finish up again, walk the dog, dinner, maybe spend some time with the folks. Um,
Okay.
Sometimes fight a losing battle of staying away from screens. But yeah, just try and get some me time at the end of the
Okay.
day and then sort of repeat. Um, yeah.
No, it's interesting. I love listening to how other people's days go like, and that's why Instagram and Facebook work because we are always interested in other people's
True.
lives.
So true.
So okay, and then what keeps you going, Arjun? Share with us what else is your passions besides Nagin.
I think you got a flavor for it, a flavor of it already. In some of the previous, stuff that I've talked about. Like
Okay.
I love dogs, I love football, I love
Ah,
music, hot sauce, and it's just great to be in a position to be able to this is the closest thing I'll come to like following my passion, right? Like hot sauce is amazing. I absolutely love it. But recently got married, so that's exciting. Yeah, I think like just a little bit of joys in your personal life really help you kind of do better at work and vice versa. There's like a nice mojo that seems to transfer between different aspects of your life. So yeah, just try and
okay.
get to more of it. Hopefully get a little more chance to get back to doing some of the things you love, but like,
All right. And with that, I do have one last question for you. What do you tell yourself? How do you keep going when you hear all those no's and rejections? Maybe even customer complaints or people hated your product. Like, what's your hack for getting yourself back on track and keep going ahead? Is there one?
um I think at this point you've just sort of like heard a lot of them before.
Mm.
So you're better at dealing with each one. But each time someone's unhappy, it's kind of like, it's not a great feeling. But you also understand that at the end of the day, it's food. It is
Mm.
subjective, and you can't please everyone all the time.
Okay.
But each time you get something, like say some feedback that you didn't love about, like that they didn't love about the product, you'll hear something from someone who's just, it just makes your day. So I
Yeah.
mean, I'd say it just balances each other out. I think the idea is to not overthink anything too much, let
Mm.
it sort of trouble you, unless it's really great feedback, and then you absolutely should do something about it. So I mean, I think we look at each one of those as an opportunity to learn something and better understand the different types of folks and perspective out there. And I think over time you just sort of piece enough of this together to just get a better idea of people. But it's not really it just motivates you to do better next time. Like you just want to have a better product, or like do even better customer service, or like deliver it even faster. Just like all you want to do is just like make customers happy, because like that's really why you're doing it. Like if you just wanted to make a hot sauce for yourself, you could probably whip it up in your kitchen and spend your life doing that. But you chose to do it to bring it out to a whole bunch of people. And yeah, like I said, like a little earlier also, like you just want to do the things that you love about your own experiences. So like whenever you get great experiences with other brands, with other products, you kind of want to see how much of that you can learn and apply to what you're doing. So I think we just try our best to make everything a learning experience, as opposed to just something that to be down about.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's probably it.
Great advice, and I think you've been really open and shared so much with us, and there's so much to take away from this conversation. I'm saying just in general as an entrepreneur and approach to dealing with the daily happenings of entrepreneurship, because it's all high and low and all of that. So thank you so much for your time today and for being with us. People can find Naagin online on Amazon, through your website, anywhere else that you recommend?
Absolutely.
Uh,
They can check us out in stores. We're in Nature's Basket, Reliance, Food Hall, Ratnadeep, Namdari. Depending on where you are in the country, you'll probably find us at a major grocery chain next to you.
okay.
And yeah, that's
All right.
that's where we are.
Good.
Thank you so much also for having me. This is excellent. I don't know which part of this would be exciting for folks, but I'm really glad that you found value in doing this. And like, thank you for having this conversation. This is awesome. Really appreciate it. You've been
Thank you,
superb to
Arjun.
like
All of
coordinate
it
with.
was filled with value. So thank you. Yeah, so thank you for being here and for this conversation today.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Okay, just 1 second. Let me stop recording. We will be sharing